Hello and welcome to the Creative Studio version 5 demo. It's Gammill's pleasure to bring you exciting new features. Behind the scenes, we've authored Creative Studio with an entirely new development environment, developed new firmware for your controller to make it run even better than ever, made Creative Studio fully Windows 7 and 8 compliant. We've made these changes to make your stitching even smoother, to make your button responses faster and better, make your crosshairs update in real time, to be able to record patterns smoothly with no time limits, to improve your quilting experience. Whenever you install Creative Studio, one of the new things that you're going to notice is this little pop-up box here. Are you installing Creative Studio for standalone mode or Stitcher mode? In this case, I'm connecting to my Stitcher, so I'll click Stitcher. If you're just putting this on your laptop for standalone mode, or people sometimes call SAM, you can just hit this button here. So I want to click Stitcher. And what it's going to do when I click Stitcher is that it's going to tell me to make sure the power is on, and then click OK to proceed, and then it's going to check my firmware version to make sure that it's up to date. In this case, this controller that I'm connecting to is not up to date. I wanted you guys to be able to see what it would look like whenever you connect to a Stitcher that's not up to date. Okay, so it's gone and checked the Stitcher, and it's determined that its firmware is out of date. Exiting setup, no changes made. Please contact Gammill, and there's the phone number, 866-830-3738 to acquire your firmware update kit. Okay, now it's going to exit. You'll get this error 1722. There's a problem with the Windows installer package. A program run as part of the setup did not finish as expected. And then you'll get Wizard was interrupted before Creative Studio could finish. Your system has not been modified. And then to complete the setup at another time, please run the setup again. What you'll need to do now is contact Gammill, acquire your kit, run the kit, and then rerun the Creative Studio 5.0 setup, and you won't get that error message. If whenever you start Creative Studio you get this message, this is another check where we're checking to make sure that your firmware is up to date, because we want your experience on your Stitcher to be as good as possible. So we're double checking it here. We check it in the setup, but then we check it again every time Creative Studio starts. You can go ahead and start Creative Studio after you get this message, but we would recommend you get your firmware as soon as possible. At the top of this menu is the list of your current firmware. This one here is Rev 1.0M. The letters are what we're looking for, and you need to have Q4, R2, or R. This is viewed sometime in the future, some higher letter and number than that. If you have an old one like this one here is, call this number here and order your firmware kit. When Creative Studio starts up normally, the first time it starts, you're going to get this: to calibrate all Stitcher functions, move Stitcher to front middle. Remove thread and bobbin, click yes to start. The head will move left to right, front to back. So move your head up all the way to the front to where it's almost touching your front roller, and then just move it back just a little and put it in the middle. Make sure that the thread's out. The first thing that's going to move is your Z needle is going to move. That's going to calibrate your Z motor. It's just then going to move diagonally at a 45-degree angle, and that's going to calibrate your aux encoders, which is going to make your record function much better, and also make your regulated stitch more regular. And then it's going to move right to left 10 inches and then back to front 10 inches, and that's going to calibrate your power assist. And when it's done, you'll get a message that says calibration successful. When you first load Creative Studio, you'll notice that there's lots of new icons here at the top of the screen. And you create a new quilt group. You notice that the quilt group names are automatically filled in for you. You can change it if you want. or you can just hit OK. If you add another one, it'll be called quote group 2. When you hit grid size, it'll automatically fill in the grid, and there's no need to hit view grid anymore. I'll put a pattern on the screen now. You'll notice these new icons at the top of the screen. This one here is zoom in. And when you release, it'll turn off. This one here is zoom out. When you click it, it'll zoom out. It'll zoom out wherever you're centered. So that's the zoom in icon, and this is the zoom out. And again, when you click them, push the center of where you want to zoom, then let up when you're done, and then it'll turn back off. If you want to zoom some more, you'll have to come up and hit it again. You can change the position you zoom at, like that. And then of course here's your view all button to see the whole thing. Zoom out works very similar to that. This is the pan button. Turns your cursor into a hand, and then you can grab and pull it around wherever you want to go. When you let go, it'll turn back to the normal cursor. This button here cycles the handle selection. So there's your center handles, your endpoint handles, which don't work very good on this pattern, but your stretch handles. The next icon is the set so order icon. This does the same thing as the F8, and so you can change the order of these patterns just by clicking them, and then you can just hit the set so order again to commit the changes. The next icon is the measure on the CAD. I want to know how big this center is. I can click and click, and it shows up down here. This measure box has been redone. If I want to be able to right-click this pattern on a tablet, obviously you don't have mouse buttons, so you can click this right-click, new right-click feature, and the next click you make will be a right-click. So there you can see I can get to all my right-click functions now that way. You can also, it turns off after you click, but the last thing I did some measuring. So like actually let me pick a pattern, and then I can pick the right-click, and then I can come down here, and the next click I make is going to be a right-click, and there I can have my right-click measure transfer functions. The next icon is the draw boundary icon. Click that, and it's just like the Alt B in the menu item. You can draw out boundaries. You can use grid point snap, endpoint snap, whatever you want. And then if you can right click with your mouse, or if you're on a touch screen, you can hit the right click here and it'll close it. It'll stay active. You can draw another if you want. Or you can click the draw boundary to close. And here I'll put a pattern to boundaries so you can see that they're actually boundaries. Draw trim works much the same way. Just click where you want to trim at. Again, you can right click from your mouse, which I just did, or click the new right click icon. And again, you can click the function to close it. All these functions above work the same way. Okay, now I'm going to draw a 3-point arc. So 1, 2, 3. You know, it retains the. You can adjust the third one, obviously, like always. You draw another one. You can right-click to close, or in this case, you click the draw arc to close. Draw a curve is very similar. Click all the points you want the curve to go through. Right-click to close. Now right-click just closes the one thing that you're drawing on. You can draw another one, and right-click to close, and then right-click again to close the whole function. Or again, you could have clicked the draw a curve icon to close the whole function. There's a lot of variety and a lot of options here. Draw a line, same thing. Click as many points as you want to draw lines to that. I'm right-clicking on the mouse, and now I'm drawing some more lines. And right-click on the mouse, closes the whole thing. Draw freehand allows you to draw freehand drawing. So I apologize, I'm on a touchpad here, and it's a lot better if you're on a touch screen. And then this is draw with a pattern. Okay. And right-click to close. We've also added lots of new icons to the right edge of your CAD screen. We call these RightClick Icons. And the first one is virtual stitch out. You'll notice that if you hover over the icon, each of these will pop out and tell you what they do. So I'm going to go ahead and click that, and there it's showing where the stitch path is going to go. And then you can click the same icon again to stop it. If this next icon is rotate pattern, like that. It'll rotate at whatever you have the degree set at. So if you right-click this pattern, change the rotation degrees to say 10, it'll remember that, and it'll rotate by 10 from then on. Some people like to change that to like 1 degree. It allows for fine adjustment. The next icon is flip pattern horizontally. So if I wanted this set of patterns here to sew back and forth, I could pick that bottom row and click that, flip horizontal. And now it'll sew the top 3 and then come drag thread down along this edge and then sew back this way. Same thing with the flip vertical. Or if I don't like what I just did, I can just hit delete, which is the next icon. You can pick a pattern and click this red down arrow, and it'll be toggled as sewn, and it won't sew. You can toggle the green down arrow, and it'll toggle a sewn pattern as unsewn. The next icon is combine group. Pick all the patterns you want to be in a group, and then pick the gold book with the tabs, and then they'll all become one pattern now. And then you can hit the golden hammer, and it'll rubber stamp the patterns. The next icon is a circular array. You have to pick a pattern first that you want a circular array. put your center point down like that. I should point out that if you don't have a pattern selected, like I didn't when I first did this, and then you click, like here, there's no pattern selected, and then you click any one of these functions that requires a pattern to be selected, it'll just beep at you and it won't do anything because it doesn't know what to do. So you gotta tell it what you want to do, and then click it. So if you click one of these and you hear a little beep, that's why. Divide pattern is the next one. Again, you need to select a pattern as true on all of these, and then hit the divide pattern icon, and you can divide this flower up. Okay, I'm going to pick this pattern here, and then I'm going to, I want it to sew the opposite direction, and one of the ways you can do that is to click the reverse start and end, which is this little green icon here with the arrows. Now the start and end is reversed. If I like that and I want to save it as a pattern, I can click export pattern to CSQ, this little car here, and it'll ask you for a name. Save it, and you can see it's added to your project now. The next icon is the fill inside icon. I've got 4 meanders here, and then I've got circular boundary. I converted a geocircle into a boundary. I can pick all the patterns and then hit fill inside, and it'll make it to where the meander is just inside that circular boundary. And then I'll just show you a virtual stitch out here real quick. Okay, now I've got 2 boundaries up here. I'm going to pick my 4 patterns, and I'm again going to pick fill inside. It's just a variation of the fill inside. When there's 2 boundaries, it'll create like a donut type shape. Useful if you've got a block on the outside and then an applique in the middle. The sun with the cloud is fill outside. I have a boundary, 4 patterns selected. Click fill outside, and it'll sew these patterns and leave the middle blank. The last icon on the right is the convert icon. Click that and it pops out this menu, and all the pink ones are the pattern related converts. So P2T means pattern to trim, and if you hover over it, it'll pop out and tell you what it does. The blue ones are boundary related, and the beige ones are trim related. So here I'll pick a pattern, and I'll say I want to convert it P2T, which is pattern to trim. Let's pick another one. P2B is pattern to boundary. P2O is pattern to outline, which won't really have much effect on this circle. So let me pop over to something where it will have an effect. Convert that to an outline. And what that'll do is just leave you with the outside of the pattern, and it's still sewable. Okay, then pattern to curve. We'll go in and divide this. We'll see that there's only 4 places to divide this pattern. Escape out of the divide. Then if I hit pattern to curve, and I go back in and divide, you can see that there's many more places that we can divide this pattern up to. Okay, and then I've made these into boundaries, and I made the bottom ones into trims. So I have a boundary selected over there on the left, and I'm going to say I want to convert that boundary to a pattern. And does it like that. I'm going to convert this boundary into a trim. I'm going to convert this trim into a pattern, T2P. As I said earlier, the letters, all the T's stand for trim, the 2 is the action, and the P stands for patterns. B stands for boundary. And here we'll convert a trim to a boundary. If I'd go along and delete these patterns, then decide, oops, I didn't mean to do that, you can hit this undo button. It'll bring each of those operations back. The undo does not undo operations that have multiple patterns selected. So if you have multiple patterns selected when you did the operation, it will skip storing that undo state. You'll note that the dock is a little different. If you want to, we got rid of, to save space, the bar that's above each of these areas, and then we reorganized the properties and changed the way they're named and stuff, and we gained probably about 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch depending on the screen, which gives you quite a few more spaces that you can have patterns on your screen and more room for property data, the important stuff. Not too many people ever use the pen, so we got rid of it. If you do want to reduce the size and get more CAD area, you can do something like that. Just slide it over. If you need see more properties or more patterns, you can push this up and down. Related to that, you'll notice that the setup dialogues appear a little bit different. Also, you'll note that the button pads are now a little different. If you have a computer that will support it, you'll actually be able to see through these buttons. I've actually got that turned off right now. Click OK. The pop-out for setting these values is different. You have a much bigger up-down tumbler. If you want to change the property values on this, what we recommend is that you double-click in these areas. It's a more efficient way of changing it, and it's consistent throughout all the property fields. Now, in the past, like in areas like this, you used to have to click OK. Now all you have to do is move your mouse off and it's committed. So, you know, we're consistent on that throughout all the these pop-out fields, where in the past we weren't. Sliding your mouse off will commit what your changes that you just made. Keypad window is now interactive, so it's not just a visual representation of what the keys represent on the head. You can actually click them with the mouse or your finger throughout the entire program. You'll note that all the fonts in Creative Studio are now bigger and bolder. The right-click menu font is now about twice as big. You know, same thing with the properties fields. All the fields have icons next to them that relate to the icons over here on the right. Same thing is true up here above with menu items. Now have icons next to them that represent their function, so that you can begin to visually learn just by looking at the picture what these functions do, and it will speed things up. We've improved the restart function after a thread break, so that now it should be just a few stitches before the thread break occurred. As always, it's never a perfect science, but we did find a way to improve this some. We've improved the consistency of the right-click function closing the current action. Here I'm right-clicking on the CAD, and the function will close. If you have a project with lots of quilt groups on the screen, you can click page up and page down to go through the quilt groups. Now, if the mouse is off in a different area, page up, page down may not get the focus that it needs here. It's getting a focus over here on the Project Explorer. But as long as you have your mouse over the CAD, it'll go through quickly through your quote groups. This is kind of a cool feature that a lot of users have wanted. You can zoom in to where the grid is the size on your screen that it is in real life. Like here, I'm going to set my grid to 1 inch. Then I'm going to go ahead and zoom in to where I feel 1 inch would be. Okay, and then when you hit this little button right here, it'll set that zoom position to be 100%. So now, if I zoom out, I click that, it'll go right to 100%. This is useful for gauging quilt density. Again, just to maybe try to say it a little more clearly, zoom to whatever you feel is a size that you want it to be at whenever you click this button. It doesn't have to actually be 1 inch on the screen equals 1 inch on the CAD, but you can do it that way. Most people do it that way, but if you have a big screen, you might want to make it some other different value. All you do is hit that button, and now this is your new 100%. The crosshairs are now completely smooth in real time to your movements of the stitcher, and also the X and Y coordinates on the taskbar also are real time and completely fluid. Because of these changes to the crosshair and controller and CreativeStudio, this means that the record function is now very fluid and there's no time limit that we are calibrating the record function as CreativeStudio starts up. All this means that you can use your head stitching to create your own patterns much better than before. One thing I should show you about this that is a feature might get passed over is the record feature. Whenever I turn it on, you notice how it's jumping. That's because my auxiliary encoders and my motor encoders have become slightly out of sync. Everything in CreativeStudio is based off the motor encoders, the patterns on the screen and everything like that. The auxiliary encoders are mainly just used to calibrate the or to control the stitching in freehand, like regulated. It's nice if they would be aligned while you're doing your record motion, and to do that, just hit this little asterisk right here, and now when you start recording, you see that it doesn't jump and it'll record perfectly alignment with the motors. When you're recording, you'll note that this button turns blue and behind this asterisk turns red. You also note that the regulated form has been moved down to the lower right, as have many of the forms, given a tighter appearance so that you can more easily see what's going on your CAD screen. Regulated mode and record that you have crosshairs stay live during these modes so that you can more easily blend your freehand and computer guided work. The button response is now much better than it has been in the past. Occasionally in the past we'd lose a user's button click or be slightly slow to respond to it, especially compared with the new CreativeStudio and the new firmware. Quite the improvement, I guess. I might appreciate it once you actually are using it. A small change is the move cursor for the patterns has been increased in size to make it easier to grab. Based upon user feedback, we're now storing more settings of things that users were frequently having to change from session to session. One of them is the point-to-point angle. We're storing that. This start-end marker that in SAM was not very much used, especially if you're using the SAM to preview patterns to potential clients. And often that is turned off. I'll show you real quick how you do turn that off. You right-click the pattern, you press Options, and you remove this check that says Display Start and End Marks. and now the start and end won't show. Now Creative Studio will remember that, and so if that's what you prefer, that's what you get. The measure from the head menu is different. It's no longer in the middle, it's smaller and it blends in with the CAD background. Again, this is to help make the interface between the CAD and the head easier for you. Another advantage is that as you change the pattern, undo points are stored at each one of these times that I release the handle. And I go on this group, delete patterns, those are stored. Go in another group, make a change, another one. You get the idea. But in the past, whenever you go to different quote groups, those changes would be lost. But now, ta-da, we're storing those. And also, you can undo and you can redo. Believe me, this comes in pretty handy. In regulated, we've greatly smoothed the channel lock, especially at various angles. 45, 30, lot smoother than it ever has been before. In the tools menu, we move the calibrate power assist and the calibrate record to underneath the calibrate all. So there's really actually 4 calibrates now. There's calibrate all that will run when you first install Creative Studio, that for one time that you first install it. Or you can press this button and do a calibrate all. Or you can calibrate individual functions like the power assist, the stitcher motor, which is the needle Z, or the record calibration. The stitcher motor you may need to do from time to time. The power assist calibration like we're used to seeing in previous versions, so that remember you can fine tune that to match your needs here with these sliders. In border corner and edge to edge, if you start a border corner, for example, and you click 2 points, you'll get this message that says your boundary points are identical, belts are probably disconnected, but you would have stayed in border corner mode and your border corner setup would have stayed right here. Now when you click OK, the setup goes away and the border corner goes away. So it just wipes it away. Same thing in edge to edge. If you click 2 points, you'll get that same message. If you hit stop, it'll cancel everything out. This will prevent errors and user confusion. Also note that in edge to edge, we're automatically calling it edge to edge 1, edge to edge 2. We're not giving a choice for the user to name it. This will save you one step and also make it very clear that you're in an edge to edge. In border corner, we call them border corner 1, border corner 2. Same thing. We'd like for you just to use these groups almost exclusively for doing that type of work. Enjoy Creative Studio 5.0. Happy quilting!